We'll discuss race and how it plays a factor, and how we didn't even talk about this topic because we were afraid.
A Black Executive Perspective.
Welcome to a Black Executive Perspective podcast, safe space where we discuss all matters regarding race, culture, and those uncomfortable topics people tend to avoid. I'm your host, Tony Tidbit.
And I'm your co-host, Chris P. Reed, and we're here live to tackle the real, the raw, the often uncomfortable truth shaping our world. No fluff, no filters, just bold conversations on issues that matter, from power to politics to culture, corporate America. We're breaking it all down without holding anything back. So let's get into it live with the audience and our folks here.
Absolutely, Chris. And as we jump into it, we're excited to have Dr. JoJo McManus, who's an award-winning author and educator, has established herself over 25 years, a leader in the intersection of anti-race education, inclusive excellence, and leadership development. Dr. JoJo, welcome to a Black Executive Perspective podcast, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. We got a great topic today, and I've been watching for a long time, so I'm excited to be in the conversation live today.
Okay, buddy. So we're excited for you here. We're excited for you to be here too. So Chris, are you ready, man? Let's dive into it.
Absolutely. Love operating without a net. So, one of the things that happened, and I was hitting you up because I had a dynamic in my coaching practice where I was asking some of my clients about being rich versus being wealthy. And I remember harking back to a time when I was a lad and $1 million was everything. It's just like it was the end all be $100 worth of candy, $100 worth of penny candy, and $1 million, and you couldn't tell me nothing, right? that was the goal. That was the apex of everything. And of course, we're all educated, so we understand inflation and economics and how the world has gotten to the point where the deficit and things like that has grown. There used to be a ticker, that we used to have a deficit ticker that you could tap into where it said the United States is so much in debt, blah, 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 blah. And I didn't know what that meant or that had to do with wars a long time ago or none of those other things. But recently, I think the intersection of money and the reality of how that's created and the identity of the United States is all jumbled. Obviously, it's a lot of disinformation and misinformation, but just basic blocking and tackling economics is starting to creep its way into the psyche, because you wisely put that the election was run and won on the term of economic instability. They're running this country to the ground. Eggs are, how much was the eggs, Tony?
$6 a carton.
$6, yeah, what I'm saying?
Now they're $7.50.
Right. Had to put 2 cows on layaway to get milk. It was a crazy situation. And since then, the more I look at it and the more I see, I'm starting to become confused that what is the threshold, or what is that $1 million to my children? What does the world look like from what does the United States look like specifically from what we see as a good amount to retire on? Of course, we're all getting to the point where, a couple years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they're saying, do you have enough to retire? Do you have Charles Schwab or somebody else in your business? You know what I mean? So I thought that would be good for us to bring to our audience of sophisticated individuals and see what they think about how we see money and how money is being portrayed and sometimes demonized and sometimes idolatrized.
Yeah, buddy. I mean, look, here's the thing, though. In today's world, where we are today, one of the things that's being demonized is billionaires. Okay. And I'm going to get into the stats in a second. However, this is a capitalist society, right? And capitalism is based on every man for himself. You can go out and build anything you want to build. You can make as much money as you want to make, or you ain't got to make no money, right? And that's basically it, okay? And then if you think about it, when you think of capitalism, let's just be fair, right? You look at Bill Gates, you look at my man Schultz, I'm sorry. You look at my man at Amazon. You look at, Bezos, and then you have my man from Starbucks, Schultz, right? You look at a few more of those individuals, right? They've created, now they're worth a lot of billion. You look at Elon Musk, they're worth a lot of money, okay? But at the same time, they've also created a lot of jobs, okay? And so, and people who work at those jobs, some of them, not all of them, but some of them make a lot of money. Not to their level, but, you know, let's be fair, some executives, whatever case may be, right? So that's what we know we're supposed to stand on, capitalism, right? Now we know that goes south too, right? If Bill Gates go under, a lot of people go under, all right? If Schultz go under, a lot, and when I say a lot of people, it's because they employ a lot of people, okay? And their money is all over the place, so that's what I mean, right? But when you talked about this, one of the things, when you brought up this topic, is that, you know, there's a, and I want Dr. Jojo to jump in here, but right now you have people who believe in capitalism. They believe all the things I just got finished saying, okay? But at the same time today, they get mad at billionaires, all right? They're like, how they don't need to make that much money, blah, blah, blah. But wait a minute, if you believe in capitalism and you believe in all these type things, then how will you get upset at people who are billionaires that actually, they did exactly everything. I'm not saying they did everything above board, but they did exactly, they played the game. They played the game, right? What's that old saying? Don't hate the player, hate the game. All right, so they played the game, all right? And they played the game. It was right there for everybody to play, right? So that's what we wanted to do. If you believe in capitalism, why are you mad at billionaires? Dr. Jojo, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think we have to think about whether we all agree that we believe in capitalism first, right? So, and for me, it's really not about do I believe in capitalism writ large or thinking about what type of capitalism we're dealing with, right? Our capitalism in this country was built as plantation capitalism, right? It was built on the idea of having people working for free and building wealth for a very small number of people. And I don't think that we should, you know, necessarily say capitalism is bad, it shouldn't exist, but there needs to be a capitalism that has a social conscience, right? I think that that's not something that we could say, oh, we can't do that. It's just every person for themselves, as if we're all starting at the same line and have all the same hurdles in front of us, because that's just not true, right? And all those people that you named had huge head starts and many less hurdles than most of us in front of them. So I think we can think about how to improve capitalism, and we can look at other countries. I know we don't like to do this in the United States, and we don't like to learn from anybody else because we're the best, we're perfect. But we can look at other models around the world and say, okay, can we continue with the idea of capitalism, and how do we improve it? And we have done that over time, right? There's aspects of socialism and aspects of other forms of economic drivers that we've incorporated, everything from Social Security and those kind of safety nets and things like that we've incorporated. So I think we have to dig into those nuances a bit, right? And the whole conversation about the billionaires is, maybe we'll get to that in a little bit, but that's a whole other story.
So before we answer your question, number one, I want to make sure that the audience, because I want you guys to be a part of this as well, right? You know, do you believe in capitalism? And if you do, why are you upset at billionaires? Okay? Because again, let's be fair. And I know Dr. Jojo's, you know, broke it down, but let's be fair. You can plantation capitalism any way you want to name it, right? At the end of the day, capitalism, you can make as much money as you want to as you can make. Okay? You put a business together, you can make as much money as you make, right? You put a business together, you make $5,000, or you make $100,000, or whatever the case may be, right? So if you believe in capitalism, do you also believe that, are you still upset or get mad at billionaires? So I'd love to hear your thoughts, but back to Dr. Jojo's question, Chris, do you believe in capitalism?
Absolutely, and I believe that there should be no cap on capitalism. like I believe you can get what you got to get, or what you feel like you need to get, as long as you are willing to do what it takes to get it. Now, I'm not talking about Wild Wild West. I'm not talking about. I'm gonna pull one of your movies, Tony. There was a movie called Antitrust, and it was about a young. Now, for liability's sake, I can't say the tech CEO that it was about, but basically it was saying if anybody came up with a bright idea or a good idea that could rival him or be in competition, he would take them out. Either financially he would buy them out, or he would literally accidents would occur, like old Putin style, right? Somebody come up limping and poisoned. And that is, to be honest with you, when you go back to the history of economics in the United States, Rockefeller was accused of that. The Standard Oil got like the Carnegie. Like they would blow up people's business, burn down your.
Especially
man,
Rockefeller, definitely.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Right. So they would make sure that they did what needed to be done, legally or illegally, morally or morally, keep their competitive edge, and they built multi-generational wealth with that standard and with that allowance. Now, when it starts to get that way, we don't want that to be synonymous with American tactics for business, and we want to have a fair market economy. But the reality of it is, and this is where I may surprise you, Dr. JoJo, I believe that the system and the way that it's set up and the way that it's continued to be run is to generate a level of scarcity for the one percenters, so they do keep their special denotation of, the wealthiest of the wealthiest. Every time somebody gets I remember when billionaires first started getting popular. I remember when Bezos and it was Larry, who was Larry for Oracle, the Oracle guy.
Yeah, the Oracle guy. I need to Ellison, isn't it Ellison?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was him, Branscombe, and Bill Gates, and they were billionaires. And it was like, I can't imagine a billion. Now we talk about Elon Musk about to be a trillionaire at some point. Like, these numbers aren't even real. They're not fathomable. And so I don't know if there should be a cap on that. Like, we should just say, hey, you've made enough, the bank won't take any more of your money. How does that even work in practicality? Because the social aspect, responsibility of being a moral earner and contributor to society does not necessarily tie into what we classically see as a capitalistic economy.
Yeah. Well, look, let me real quick. Let me answer, and then I want to hear from Dr. JoJo, and I want to play something. I believe in capitalism as well, right? I definitely believe. It's interesting when you say, excuse me, I don't believe in a. So just say I don't believe in a cap, right? Because if you throw a cap, we talked about inflation and stuff to that nature, right? So at some point, I remember my first job in corporate America. I made $13,000 a year. Okay, so if you put a cap on it, I may be in the slums today. All right, because 13,000 back in the day, it went somewhere. But the bottom line is, 13,000 a day, you ain't got enough money to live in the slums. So my point I'm trying to make is that I wouldn't want no cap, but I understand more from a political standpoint, which we're going to dive into. But to answer your question, Dr. JoJo, I definitely believe in capitalism.
I think that I would believe in it more if the mythology around it was true, right? That if you work hard, and have good ideas and etc., then you'll be successful. But the idea of a cap is totally irrelevant to 99.9% of us. If you put the cap on $1 billion, that is not going to affect my life ever, right? No matter how hard I work, no matter how great an idea I might have, it's irrelevant, right? So I don't even know if I agree with a cap as much as I believe that those who have the most should give the most to the rest of the country that has made that possible for them. My concern is that we're nowhere near the mythology of if you work hard and you're smart and all this stuff. This is very much a predatory experience. And the head starts that so many people have because of the way that this nation started capitalism in this country. Those head starts make it so that not only is it, not that myth of work hard, get ahead, but it's also that there are people that, and one of them is sitting in the Oval Office, that's not the brightest, certainly, right? Certainly not the most ethical, certainly hasn't had brilliant ideas, has gone bankrupt however many times, and still gets to be a billionaire, right? And many of the people who work the hardest, period, are coming from generational poverty, right? And they're doing the jobs that those people would never even consider doing because that's all they had access to. And so the hard work does not pay off. That cap is never going to be a reality. You cap it at 100,000 and they're never going to hit it, right? So I think that I would be more of a capitalist if the mythology were true. Since it's not, I think we do need to have governors on it, right? We've got to have some sort of way of saying that those with the most, those who, you know, have this generational wealth have to give more. Instead, it's the opposite. We at the lower levels, we give at a higher percentage, whether it's taxes or philanthropically, right?
Right. I mean, so look, you made a good point, and I think that's the conversation. We're gonna have to have you come back for another conversation about is the dream or the narrative that you work hard and you can work your way all the way up to the top, okay? And there's a lot of studies that say that's not true, okay? And to your point, it's not true, right? And to your point, if we look at is there Oprah who did it? Absolutely. Is there, you can name a few that did it, right? But the majority of people can't do it. However, the majority of people think you can. So when they think you can, then in their mind, right, even though they don't see no progression, but they think you can, if you create a narrative, you create a dream, and everybody see a couple people, you know, make a dream, right? And you're like, oh, they do it, I can do it. But the majority of them, you just talked about number 47, his family gave him 15 million or 50 million or whatever it was to start off. All right, you already there. All right, you were already on that level. But here's the thing. I think that from I still believe in, look, I don't want nobody to control my money. I don't want nobody to control, even if I only move up 2%. I don't want nobody to control my destiny. All right. So I just think, so that's where I come with, I believe the capitalism thing. But here, let me throw some stats at you guys, and I want to play a quick little clip. How many billionaires you think in the world?
500 or 1,000, I don't know.
500,000?
I would say 10,000.
You say 10,000.
Billionaires?
Right. Billionaires? Yeah.
I would say 5,000.
5,000, right. So there's about 3,600 billionaires, or 3,000, something like that, 3,100 around the world. Okay. How many in the United States?
I'm going to go 300. I'm going to go 300.
300? All right, what you got? I got 300. Can I get 400? Can I get 355? Can I get 425? What do you think, Dr. JoJo?
Too many. That's how many.
So they're 900.
Okay.
So they're not. So a third of the billionaires in the world is here in the United States. Yeah. Almost a third, I should say. Here's the kicker. How many billionaires was it in 1980? Which was 45 years ago. 13.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
13. How many billionaires was it? I believe, and somebody look me up, because I'm doing this by memory. The numbers, there was, what was it? 800 billionaires, or excuse me, there were 1,600 billionaires. Oh no, there were 900 in 2020. How many things happened after 2020? Mm-hmm. You see, the majority
even if you look at the billionaires that we know, like Bezos and Musk, their billions have increased exponentially just within the last 5 or 10 years.
That's correct.
Flat out.
And that's because of the level of exploitation,
all that,
and all of the inflation, all that, yeah.
All that, right? Let me play this quick little clip, right? And then we'll come back to it. But look, we believe that capitalism, totally get it. People can make as much money. I mean, at least Chris and I believe that, right? But whatever the case may be. But let's see where the danger is. But first, let's put some stats behind it.
Another interesting takeaway is that the super rich today have so much more money than what we've been talking about so far that is just mind-blowing. So 243,000 people in the world are what economists call UHNs, ultra high net worth individuals, which means that they have more than $50 million. Of those, around 7,000 have more than $500 million. And then we still haven't even gotten to the billionaires. Stefan Persson, who I talked about in the beginning, has around $20 billion. And Bill Gates, he has around 128 billion. And Elon, He has 220 billion. So the super duper rich today, they aren't a little richer than the rest of us. They are truly astronomically richer than the rest of us.
So think about that for a second. 243,000 people have $50 million and more. 243,000. 7,000 have 500 million and more. Now, hold on a second. Let's be fair. All those people ain't in the United States,
Right.
right? So, Dr. Jojo, my question is that, I get it here in the United States. How did these other people in these other countries create that type of wealth? Did they open up a CD in the United States? Did they,
In
what
one
I'm
way-
saying?
In one way or another, the same way. They've exploited other people, right? You can't make that much at an hourly wage, right? You make that off the backs of other people, right? So whether it's you're the leader of a country and you take all the money from the oil that you're selling, or whether you're, the head of a giant firm that delivers everything to our homes, and the people that are doing all the work are barely making minimum wage, that to me is where we fall down when we talk about capitalism, right? If capitalism was about, okay, the top person, they can make more, but do they need to make 10,000% more than the bottom person, right? And if there's going to be a cap, maybe that's where we need to cap things, right? But that doesn't account for the people that just have generational wealth. I've met people that have never worked a day in their life, right? Nothing, never sweated, never had to do anything for the millions and even billions that they have, because it's been passed on. And so I think when you ask about how people get there, it's off of the backs of other people, one way or another.
Yeah, here's the thing though, bro, is that, I can't, like, again, if somebody passes money on to somebody else, they don't do nothing with it. I can't get mad at that, right? That was, their family set it up and the whole 9 yards. I think, to me, your point about having more people be able to do that is really the key here, right? Is, there's a thing I saw, and it's really eye-opening, and it talks about how it goes to your premise that the majority, that meritocracy is not real, okay? Because the bottom line is the majority of people, either them or their families, stay in the same positions. And they got studies to show, and they showed one it takes like 7 generations or 4 or 5 just to move up a couple of spots. You'll get an Oprah every now and then. You'll get somebody else that'll break through. But the majority of, based on our families, based on what they had or didn't have, I'm talking generations ago, right? At the end of the day, you don't break through, you don't move up that much, right? So I get that. My challenge is from a political standpoint. I think where people are upset with billionaires, and I love to hear your thoughts on this, is not because they got so much money, right? It's more because they got money and then they're utilizing it in the wrong way to keep power, or they're utilizing it in a way to create narratives so they can keep power. I see, Chris, you got a funny face. I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, first of all, exploitation is the world's oldest occupation. So that was the original, whether it be selling people or warring tribes, taking in, labor.
That's how they made money.
That's how they made their easier for
Bootlegging.
themselves.
Yeah.
It's the world's oldest occupation. So that is always going to be around and has been around. The issue is we have what is disguised, but it is a caste system. Now we shame other countries that have other industrialized countries that have caste systems, but you just talked about it, Tony. Generally, the people that are there are going to make sure they're there and their kids are there. Now, I can tell you this candidly. I don't want my kids to go backwards, so I'm going to do things to put my kids in place.
Correct.
To be here or above.
Correct.
What has happened is, and when you showed that graph, the ceiling increased, and so disproportionately, the floor followed, but it didn't follow at the same rate.
Exactly.
So the triation between the wealthiest man and the 800 wealthiest man expanded, But a rising tide lifts all boats, right? A rising tide lifts all ships, whatever the John F. Kennedy, whatever is. And so it's not all ships. It's the ships that are in that harbor. I see what you're doing there, Dr. JoJo. A rising tide is not the butterfly effect. It's not going to cascade all throughout the world.
No.
It's just you got to be in that proximity. And then what they do is they figure out the code. Now, I will challenge you both, educated men, to say you figured out the code. Because if you look to your left and look to your right of your childhood friends and family members, you worked harder, applied a little bit of merit, a little bit of faith, a little bit of grace, a little bit of turn left when you could have turned right type situation, and turned it into something, and then compounded it like any interest. You compounded it. Everybody didn't do that. If you talk to some of these billionaires, some of these millionaires, they have the exact same testimony at a greater scale than what you and I and Dr. JoJo have. I started with this, and then proportionately, if we look at our lives, I was able to get as far as you're able to get. I'm way further ahead than what I was when I was 8 years old, 9 years old. Trust me. I'm way beyond welfare and all this other stuff. They're doing the same thing at a larger scale. And so because their economy of scale is so much greater than mine, I can't be upset because I'm on the same hustle. I'm trying to get my kids as far ahead before I hand off the baton as I can. I haven't killed anybody yet for it, but but I'm on that same mentality. Give it to me, Dr. JoJo. I like that. He said, like he ate some soup.
I hear you. I do hear you, but I think that there's some Kool-Aid being drunk.
I like it.
With respect to the whole capitalism thing, right? And when the rising tide and all that stuff, if you look at the curve of who has the least and who has the most, it's not a little gradual curve. It's low and then it skyrockets.
Yep,
right?
Yep.
And the people that have the most, and I'm not even talking about multi-billionaires, even the multi-millionaires, right? That I'm never going to be, no matter how hard I work, no matter how smart I might be. It's irrelevant. I'm never going to be that. And that has to do with access to power, right? And if you look at a person like 47, it wasn't just the amount of money that he was given initially. It was also his access to banks, access to other high net worth individuals that would, give money and invest with and all of that kind of stuff. And, my concern, I can be mad about it, right? And I think if we look at this country, the reason I use the term, plantation capitalism is because that really is literally how we built this country, was off the backs of enslaved Africans. And there's no getting around that. There's also no getting around the fact that we haven't paid any reparations to that population, right? So there was no effort to say, okay, yeah, we started that way, but let's level the playing field a little bit by saying here's some reparations, legitimate, real reparations to say now we do start at the same point, right? That's never been done. In fact, they were actually enslavers that were given reparations.
They were given reparations,
property.
Exactly,
right?
For the property.
Yeah. So,
but here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. So, I just forgot my train of my where I was going to go with this. Right?
I can keep going.
No, I know you can. Right? I know you can. Here's the thing, though, bro. So I hear you, right? And you're making an excellent point. The challenge is that today, and it's probably no different years ago, right? But today, because there is such, their trajectory has gone this, and we probably inched up a minute, a microsecond, whatever. We can, but now I'm going back to what you said earlier about power, okay? Is that now they can take their money and then they can see, everything you guys are saying is that's what I wanted to go, is that this is one of the things. When you figure out the Rubik's Cube, all right, are you promoting that all across the country? You ain't telling why, because I want to keep this to myself, okay? I don't want a bunch of other people to get on my level, right? Because if they get on my level, then I got competition with them, right? So once I crack that code, I'm keeping that to myself. And then more importantly, what I want to do is I want only the people on my level to stay on that level, or people I handpick like my kids or whatever the case may be, or their friends or my wife's cousin or whatever, you know, it's the lower deduction, all, you know, I want them. So I'm only going to share this with them. And not only that, I'm going to use my money and my political influence to make sure that we stay on top. Okay? And that everybody else stays separate from us. Then I'll create a narrative that everybody can make it. And I'll push that narrative out and get everybody to believe it. But I know for a fact everybody can't. And I'm going to use my money. So let me give you an example of this.
The Metarian principle is needed not only for the extremely rich.
Oops, wrong clip.
This is late billionaire David Koch. Even though he has never been elected, David, together with his brother Charles, did more to shape American politics than few others. Over the years, they've donated and raised billions of dollars to climate denial organizations, gun rights groups, and the Tea Party movement that arguably paved the way for Donald Trump. This is the billionaire and media mogul Rupert Murdoch. Through his media outlets like the News of the World in the UK and Fox News in the US, Rupert was instrumental in getting Britain to vote for Brexit and the US to vote for Donald Trump. This is Elon Musk, the richest person in the world. So in 2022, he bought one of the world's largest social media platforms, Twitter, so that he can use it for his own political agenda. Something that is key to both democracy and capitalism is the concept of decentralization. Our democratic and capitalistic system relies on the decentralized principles of one person, one vote, and a free market. But extreme wealth undermines the principle of decentralization, and it threatens both democracy and capitalism, because as the Koch brothers, Rupert Murdoch's and Elon Musk's actions show, extreme wealth can easily be translated into political power and also into market power.
Chris, what's your thoughts, bro?
I think that, you know, we've set it up to where we've accepted that there's a us and them, and that the rules aren't cascading evenly throughout society. We've accepted that there are certain people like you two who put your money in the tax shelters, and so you don't have to pay the taxes that I have to pay, and you guys in Trump can pay $700 a year, you know, while I'm, you know, hurting myself to pay for my taxes. There's a level of wealth, or there's a level of opulence that we've become accustomed to where the rules of normal society and normal humanity no longer tend to apply. And when they have the ability to get a taste of that, where they feel that special, that distinct, and they're not going to ever, cold dead hands are the words that come to mind as far as them letting that go. And the idea of you being able to get to a point where you have enough money to have your money. We talked about this. There's a level of money where you can't spend it in a lifetime. So then what do you do with the money that you can't spend in a lifetime? You use it to manipulate the ability to increase your ego, or to increase your thumbprint on the world, or on at least the country. And I think that that's what these folks have done in the idea of, and you're an ad guy, Tony, you've been doing this for years. You know that propaganda is real. People's psyche, the psychology of the human being is very real, and it translates very easily into how we move and what we are allowing to accept. This is why, as much as protests are put in different spots on TV, protesting from an emotional, visceral state is down. Like obviously the George Floyd thing had a lot of protests, but when we talk about real rights and opportunities to level the playing field, when's the last time that protest happened?
Well, here's the thing, though, bro. I hear you. Here's the thing. And I said it was 13 billionaires in 1980. Did you know who they were? Probably didn't, right? Did you hear anybody talk about them? No, right? There were, you know, in 1990, I think there were 40-something billion. Did you hear anything about them? No, right? They still had the money. They still did whatever they wanted to do, right? Why do you think people today are upset with billionaires? If they didn't,
They
they
throw it in
wasn't
their
upset.
face?
If they wasn't upset with them in 1980, they wasn't upset with them in 2000. They wasn't upset. You didn't hear a lot of this in 2004. Billionaires been going, but why now are they upset with billionaires? That's the question I'm asking both of you guys.
Well, from my perspective, I think because some of them have become much more public, right? The ultra
And public
wealthy
and do what? What else? And what else public? What else they
and
do?
engaged politically. right?
Engaged politically. Go ahead. They're using
so
their
we're-
money. Go ahead.
Right.
Finish your thought.
I don't think that the people that have had that much money were any better before or any worse. I think that they're being exposed now. We're seeing who they are, right? And I think we have to think about the intersection. You mentioned propaganda a little bit, and the intersection between extreme wealth, ethics, and propaganda and education, right? Because we're taught that this is the best system, right? We're taught that capitalism and democracy must go together. We're taught that other forms of government, other forms of economics are less than, right? We're taught that from a very young age. That's propaganda that we're learning, right? As if there's nothing we could learn from any other system, that we couldn't do better. This is the best way to do it.
The
and I
only
think
way.
a lot of us buy into it, even though we have zero chance, right? Like I didn't want to be lumped in, Chris, when you were saying, y'all have this. Nah, I'm still trying to put those 2 cows on layaway myself, right? Like you said earlier. Like I think that the ethics piece is something that's a problem, right? Because we do have a very predatory system of capitalism. So those that get to that highest level, I don't think it's a stretch in any way, shape, or form to say that there's a much higher percentage of people that lack ethics, right? Because you have to exploit, you have to do certain things that are very self-centered and less community-centered, less concerned for other people in order to get there, right? And you've got to justify it. If it's generational wealth, you've got to justify how your family made that money initially, right? If you look at these folks, even the ones that are now billionaires, that that exponentially increased the money that they got, they may have worked hard at that to get there, had a good idea like Amazon or something, right, and squashed all the competition like you mentioned, Tony. But if you look back at where that initial money came from, it's nothing good, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, and also we know. I mean, look, you're right. There's nothing good. I get it, right? I mean, look, Kennedy's family was bootleggers, and he became president, so we get it. Totally get it, right?
Yeah.
The thing is today, though, but he still got elected president, okay, and people still loved him before he was assassinated, okay. I mean, so. But I think
People love
today,
47. That's not telling me nothing.
no. Well, let me say this. I think people's vitriol today is not just with 47. It's with billionaires with a B regardless, right? That's really the key here. Let me give you some examples. Go ahead, Chris, before I go.
Oh, I think to answer your question, what happened between 1980 and now is my community grew. So in 1980, because the lack of mass communication and information or misinformation at my fingertips, I thought I wasn't that far off from the lawyer who lived 8 blocks, who had a big house and it was brick, but I could see him, I could touch him, and maybe I could aspire to be him because he's from where I'm from. As the world got smaller, I started seeing the distance between me and the haves was way larger than I had initially estimated. And so now I'm like, wait a second. I went to school, perfect attendance. I got straight A's. I got a scholarship, but I can't, as Dr. Jojo said, I can't catch up. I didn't realize the haves were that much further ahead 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Now I see the thing. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say they were ahead of you.
They were, but I didn't know.
Yeah, because, and here's the thing though, they didn't want you to know. See, this it's like the mafia, bro. All right, we ain't promoting this. All right, we keeping this to our own club. Today, they're out there because they're trying to create power. Okay, they're involved politically. Before, if they was, it was backdoor type stuff, right? And so that's the issue. The issue, these guys, to your point, they're putting women. They got Gayle King on their rocket ship, going up with a bunch of other women. It's on TV. All right, they wouldn't have did that. It's in your face, right? And at the same time, then they're voting or they're backing policies that's hurting a bunch of people Before they said they were behind those policies, right? Now they're like that. This is why people are. Back then they wasn't doing. They were doing it was backdoor. Okay, I'm not saying they wasn't doing it, but it was backdoor.
Right.
It's in your face now.
Let me say this real quick though. With that analogy, the psychology of a megalomaniac hasn't changed, because even with the mafia, there was the dudes with the mink coats that was giving kids dollars that wanted to be seen as the Don walking down the street in the 30s and 10s and 20s. So it's
There's
always
no
going to be
question.
that guy that wants the fame over the fortune.
But
We
here's
have
the thing,
more
though, bro.
famous people than
Here's the thing, though.
billionaires.
For years, though, they didn't do that. Even in the mafia, okay? Until you got a John Gotti, all right?
Right.
For years, they didn't do that. They kept it hidden, right? And then, yeah, you got certain personality. It's no different today. Now you just got more of them, right? But let's see why people are up. Let's see, if I'm telling the truth, let's see why people are upset with these billionaires.
The only minority destroying America is the billionaires. Trans people are 1% of the population. Muslims are 1% of the population. Undocumented people are 1% of the population. We are focused on the wrong 1%. Trans people aren't taking away our health care. Muslims aren't defunding our schools. Immigrants aren't cutting taxes for themselves and their rich friends. It's the billionaires and their puppet politicians.
So you see my point here? All right, you see my point, right? At the end of the day, these guys, they're coming out the woodwork. They're getting involved in policy, politics, the whole 9 yards. That's affecting the masses. Where before, they might have, I'm not, your boy, Rockefeller, okay? I give you a prime example with Rockefeller, okay? Rockefeller was the richest man on the planet back in the day, right? He became so rich, he didn't like what the government was doing when FDR was the president. So him and FDR was fighting, right? Rockefeller was like, I don't care about the rest of the people. I just want this for me. Okay, flat out. And that's when FDR came down on them hard. And that's why they tried to keep those people. Because if you have the richest people in politics, okay, in politics, in power, who do you think they're going to do? They're going to be about keeping what they got and only helping their friends and creating policies that's going to keep pushing what they want and their wealth and the whole 9 yards forward and forward and forward, right? So Rockefeller was one that you don't hear a whole lot about. But today, you got a bunch of, you just saw the clip. You had Murdoch, you had all these guys that's involved in this now, putting their money here, that's trying to control a country, all right? And the majority of people are not benefiting from it. Dr. JoJo.
That's not
Let me ask you this, Dr. JoJo. Let me ask you this, because you are way more qualified to answer this question. The idea of the political puppets and the money behind those puppets. We're not going to go Illuminati on this episode, all right? But the idea of the money behind these political puppets, how do we get over the fact that this is just a opera? And if we elect or take that puppet that's showing pre-indication of catering to the lobbyist or catering to big pharma or whatever the case may be, we get rid of that guy, I don't have a confidence that the next guy can't be bought out. I don't have a confidence that the next guy can't be swayed to become the next, just a more savvy political puppet. They say if you make the world idiot-proof, he'll invariably create a better idiot. So give me the confidence that politics itself is not the stain that we're trying to absolve from.
Well, I think that goes to the system that we're working with, right? That our system, we've interwoven capitalism, that particularly this predatory style of capitalism, with our politics, right? So we've got people and corporations that can donate as much as they want, right? And we say donate, but what they're doing is purchasing, right? They're purchasing whatever they want, whether we're talking about AIPAC, whether we're talking about the oil industry, whether we're talking about unions, whatever it might be, they have a lot more power than individuals, right? With respect to that aspect. And that's who they're catering to. They're going to talk to us during their campaign and use these divisive issues to get us on their side. But when they're voting based on what they're being told to vote for. And I think that's always been the case. And the huge money that was in politics, it's been there from day one. And it wasn't just the plantation owners, that was the Southern power, right? But it was also the people that were the factory folks, the railroad folks. They were all making money off of enslavement, right? It just wasn't direct, right? So we absolved the North, even though there would be no insurance companies and banks. They all came out of plantations, right? So that has always been in our politics. So if I'm about trying to figure out, okay, we can understand the history, we can understand the problem, what do we do now, right? And I think what we have to do is really, and this is, I know I have a bias because I'm an educator, but I think that we really have to pay attention to what's happening right now in education where they're censoring educators, right? And it's not like that's never been done, right? But it's at a peak right now. And they're really trying to pull us away from understanding this racialized plantation predatory type of capitalism that we have and how that's influencing our politics. And until we as the masses really stand up and vote differently, right? And then we get into the challenge of, okay, it's the lesser of two evils, right? But sometimes one evil is way worse. And we've got to start to think about how do we get people into political spaces. And unfortunately, the more conservative, the more racist, the more whatever on a different side than I'm on, those folks have understood that it starts with school boards and town councils. And they've been doing that for decades, building up this power base. And we have to, if we're going to be in this game, right? You were talking about the game earlier, Tony. If we're going to be in this game, we've got to learn to play it differently.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So, and you went to solutions, right? And I think that's great, right? Like, what can we do, right? This should be something we can do, right? And so yes, definitely this is where I struggle, to be fair, because there are solutions, to be fair. You said one of them. We got to educate ourselves just from how they're trying to push back on history and they're funding a lot of the school systems, administrations around the globe, right? Around the country, all those things, right? The challenge is, and what could we do? We can go to the town council. We can, like you said, have our town halls. We can push back, all these type things. A lot of people they're just letting them do it. They're not even, like this conversation we're having right now is like over their head, right? It's not. It's like you seeing something stolen from you right in front of your face, and then they tell you they're not stealing it from you, right? you saw them break in your house and come back out with your TV, and you're like, that's my TV. I didn't steal this from you, right? And then nobody does anything. Okay, and so these things are happening. See, this is what I was trying to get to when I said my point. I don't disagree that it hasn't happened before, Dr. Jojo. That's not my point. What I'm saying, they're doing it in your face, and then they're telling you they're not doing it. Okay, and then they're pointing the finger at you and saying you're the problem. And then they got their group who are the ones that's being taken advantage of. But in their mind, they don't care because they say, this person is for me. And as long as they're for me, they can do whatever they want to do, not recognizing that they're running roughshod over them as well. And their families are not going to say. And here's the thing, man, I got to say this because, one of the things that people, well, why you want to bring up race about this, race? It is, a lot of this has to do with race, okay? And anybody who says it's not, they don't know what they're talking about. Because at the end of the day, that's what they use to divide people. They're the ones pushing that narrative, not us. Okay, they're the ones. All Mexicans are criminals, or first it was like we're gonna deport anybody that's criminals. Now they just grabbing anybody because they're trying to hit a number, but they're not looking at the European people who may be over here and don't have a visa and all. They're doing, and now it's like we gotta whitewash the Smithsonian. All right, we only gonna send National Guard troops to only big cities that got a big urban. It's just so they're using these things to fire people up, and then while they're doing it, they're sneaking in the back. No, they ain't sneaking. They're walking through the front door while you distracted, and they're taking your stuff, right? We're gonna send down National Guards to Chicago and Baltimore. Well, what? So all these things are distractions, okay, to get you focused on these areas that they can't do legally. I'll do it, but then the court strikes it down. But don't matter. We're going to keep them distracted while we steal and rob and change this country the way we want it to be changed. And then the people who have the power to vote them out, they okay with it because in their mind, it doesn't affect them. And they're like, this person's got my back, so that's all I care about. So when you're in a situation like that, how do you light a fire under the people who sleep at the switch? And then more importantly, some of the people, not all of them, because those people who on that, a lot of them already gone. I know me and you chatted before and you like, Tony, I'm more optimistic. They're gone. But some of them can be changed. So how do you, reach out, throw an olive branch out to them to see if we can be able to open their eyes so they can see exactly what's happening before it's too late?
Well, I wish that I had an easy answer to that. I've spent my entire life working on it. And I'll tell you this, that a big part of this is about privilege scraps, right? And I think we've talked about this a little bit before when we had a conversation about my book. But this is the way that, particularly around race, but now we're doing it around, gender identity and sexual, there's all these divisions, but race is still a big foundation. And the way that you get, and Trump has said repeatedly, I love the poorly educated, right? And there's a reason for that, right? Because if I can pull the wool over your eyes and get you to vote against your best interest, right, then I get to stay in power. I can't do that if you've been taught critical thinking skills. And I can't do that if you're not willing to accept privilege scraps, right? And that's what white folks have. That we were the first sellouts in this country were the white folks that had initially stood up with folks of color, particularly indigenous folks and enslaved folks, to fight against the oppression that was the early United States, right? And when they did that, they were offered privilege scraps, white privilege in particular. And they said, you're better than those folks, right? And we're gonna give you these scraps. And I'm not saying that they haven't helped white people. I'm not trying to minimize what they were and what they are today, what white privilege is. But it's nothing to the people that have a ton of power, right? It's just enough to say, hey, you're willing to sell out for these scraps? Cool. And that's what we're still doing. And they use all kinds of divisive, notions around, whether it's abortion or whether it's LGBTQ rights or whatever it is to divide people up. But at the end of the day, I think there's here's a little bit of privilege scraps to make that you think will make you feel better, make your life a little bit better. And if you're willing to accept those scraps, then, we keep you divided and we get to stay in power. So the question is, and that's why I went into education, is why I focused on anti-racism for my entire career. And I've failed. We've all, we're doing worse right now in many ways than when I started 35 years ago. And it's because this system is no joke, right? But we're taught that it doesn't even exist, right? I really feel like education, formal and informal education, is what is going to ultimately make a difference. But it's a lot of the people that look like me that have settled for these scraps to sell out the people that are struggling right next to them. I'm going to blame this guy that's next door, right, rather than the person that's exploiting both of us.
Chris, I want to give you the final word, buddy.
You mentioned, absolutely. You mentioned the book. What was the name of that book where you talked about these things?
Oh, A Brother's Insight.
Okay, got you. Okay, but yeah, I remember that part. The one thing I would say is we allowed for there to be a inappropriate commingling of politicians and businessmen, and so let me explain how I see it. Simply put, politicians, for as long as I can remember, have had the reputation of being somewhat unscrupulous and definitely not always abiding by the things that they promise or stand for. And then that's just the nature of politicians. And then we wanted to go non-political, non-traditional, and put business owners, business leaders, people who had a financial acumen into a political position. And I can tell you, as a person who's been in corporations forever, running a company is different when the transactions are human capital, are civil capital, are emotional dynamics, are families, are it's not as easy as a retained earning that you're or EBITDA for those of you who understand. It's not the same. So you get these people with this cutthroat mindset, cut 10%, cut 7%. We got whatever we got to do with that number to Wall Street is what we need to do. And then you put these people in charge of lives and civil distributions and education, and they're running a civilization into the ground because companies are not communities in that regard. And so, and they're starting to lie like politicians and they're starting to defund or defraud the banks, and they're misstating earnings, and they're hiding, and they're like, so now you have this amalgamation of the political person and the unscrupulous Rockefeller type businessman. And the only place they have here is to just try to, in a dystopian manner, get what they gonna get, hoard it, and fend off the others. If anybody come on this property, shoot them dead. Like, they're not even letting you come to the gate to see, hey, how can I, they've created a perimeter around the best that we have to offer, and they're defending it. They're not gonna let it go until cold dead hands. That's my thought on it.
So look, brother, I love it. I love it. It's so true, so funny. Dr. Jojo, final thoughts so we can close out, my brother.
It was something that we said in the very beginning. I think that you had said it, Tony. You were talking about somebody's worth a certain amount, right?
Yeah.
And I think about that. We define people's worth by their monetary value, right? And I think that's a part of this whole equation, is we've got to start thinking about that differently, right? Because the people that are worth the most in my life don't have any money, right? My daughter is broke. She has no money, but I love her, and I think her worth is incalculable, right? And I think that we have to think about worth differently. And I think that the other piece that came to mind as you were talking, Chris, is that there's a reason why so many billionaires fight against a living wage, right? Because they make the most when the rest of us are struggling so we don't have time to protest. We don't have time to fight. We're just trying to get those, 2 cows on layaway, right? I'm stuck on that too. but there's a reason for that, right? Because if you've got billions, why would you not want the folks that are struggling to make more? Why? Only
Correct.
Because of greed.
Because you want to keep it, buddy. It's
right.
no different than a monarchy. Okay, you want to keep. Only the blue bloods can be, in this crew, and the blue bloods now are the green bloods, right? So, but more importantly, man, I thank you for joining a Black Executive Perspective podcast. I know you got a busy schedule. I know you've been watching us on our live episodes the last couple of weeks. So really appreciate you joining us today. And I want to say out to the audience as well, if you want to join a Black Executive Perspective BEP Live every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern, you want to be a guest, reach out to us at our email address on our website at blackexec.com. Let us know you'd like to come on, what you want to talk about. We're definitely more happy to have you come on, just like was ecstatic that we had Dr. Jojo McManus.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been fun, and I look forward to a continued conversation.
Absolutely.
All right.
So we want to remind you folks to tune in to other things we have on the platform. One being Need to Know with Nsinga. Don't miss, this week's episode of Need to Know with Dr. Nsinga Burton, where a Black Executive Perspective podcast allows her to cut loose. And it is a great time. And she's highly educated, very passionate, very cerebral in her perspectives on topics that are critical that shape our world and our community. You definitely want to tune in this week to Need to Know with Nsinga, where Dr. Nsinga Burton brings it.
Absolutely. And don't forget to check out our next Pull Up Speak Up here on the Black Executive Perspective podcast. Dr. JoJo came on, he threw down. That's where those provocative topics and uncomfortable conversations, and we really throw down. We talk about the topics. Definitely, it's not an episode, it's a revolution. So make sure you check out Pull Up Speak Up here on the Black Executive Perspective podcast.
And then we would be remiss if we didn't always remind you to incorporate our call to action, LESS. Our goal is to eliminate all forms of discrimination, and to achieve this, we're asking everyone, imploring everyone to embrace less. The L is for learn. Educate yourself on racial, cultural, and historical nuances that shape your world, the world that you live in.
Absolutely. Then after you learn, you have the letter E, which stands for empathy. Now, since you've learned about different people and what they go through, now you can be more empathetic because you can put yourself in their shoes.
And then the first S is for share. Share your insights and enlighten others. Don't hide it, divide it. Use outlets like ours and others to make sure that you're spreading the good word and learning as much as you can, as we started with, but making sure you don't just keep it to yourself.
Absolutely. And the final S stands for stop. We want everyone to stop discrimination as it walks in your path. So if Aunt Jenny or Uncle Joe says something that's inappropriate at the Sunday dinner table, just don't sit there and laugh or be quiet. Say, Aunt Jenny, Uncle Joe, we don't believe that. We don't say that. And you stop it right there. So if we all can incorporate less, LESS, we'll build a more fair, more understanding world. And guess what, man? We'll all see the change that we want to see, because less will become more.
We enjoy you at this time. On Tuesdays, make sure you tune in next Tuesday. Bring your energy, bring your excitement, bring your comments. We want
and
that.
Bring somebody with you.
Absolutely. Tell a friend to tell a friend, right? But also, look at other things that we've had previously. Like Tony said, we got the Pull Up Speak Up where Dr. JoJo came through and did his thing. Even our normal episodes that we put out. Make sure that you check these things out. Go to the website, sign up for the newsletter. Review us and let us know what you'd like for us to even speak about, and we can do the research and get back to you. And make sure you subscribe where you're listening. Where can they find us, Tony?
My friend, you can find the Black Executive Perspective podcast right here on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on our social channels of LinkedIn, X, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram at The Black Exec. For our fabulous guest, Dr. JoJo McManus. For my man down in Dallas, Chris P. Reed, the co-host with the most, I'm Tony Tidbit. We talked about it today. We laughed about it. We had fun about it. We educated about it. We're going to keep striving and thriving about it. We love you, and guess what? We're out.
A Black